The images from your camera might not always be true to what you have seen in person. Therefore, you will always, or almost always, need to adjust the contrast, the midtones, the brightness, and more to get that picture that you wanted. Take a look at this picture. Notice the sky. The sky has the same tonality as the boy's jacket, and the jacket has nearly the same tonality as the rock. Therefore, the boy is almost fading into the background. The only dark spot is his hair and perhaps the book. So what do you do in this case? Well, as usual, there are many options. So let's try a few options before we decide on what the final step will be. Usually the very first thing that I do is I duplicate my layer. Hit Ctrl J on your keyboard or Command M if you are using a Mac. Now let's explore our options. Let's go to Image and let's try Auto Tone. This is not too bad, but automated options will not always work. So let's undo it and try something else. Auto Contrast, well, this is kind of the same. Auto Color, this is not going to work again. They all seem to be the same. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to Image, Adjustments, and I'm going to use curves. This is one of my favorite tools in Photoshop and Photoshop Elements. Notice we have this perfectly straight line here. We can add points to this line, and now I'm going to add a point to the top, which is going to let me adjust my brightness, and a point to my bottom, which is going to let me adjust the shadows, and a midpoint, which is going to let me adjust the midpoints of this image. Let's try creating an S-curve. So how do you do that? Just create a letter S with this curve. And play around with this until you get a desired look. My goal is to always have details in the darkest shadow and details in the brightest highlight. So you can shoot for that if you wish. Let's say we're happy with this contrast that we have created right here. Click OK. This is what we had before, and this is what we have now. Now let's zoom in. I have a lot of dark shadows right here that I don't like, and it kind of sticks out. So what I want to do is I'm going to use my eraser tool. I'll change my opacity to, let's say, 25, and then I'm simply gonna erase some of these areas. And notice how it's becoming too flat. That means I should undo it because it's too obvious. I'll change my opacity to, let's say, 11. Then I'll try again. I just want to have some details in my dark shadows. And notice there's absolutely no detail in the boy's hair, so let's bring it back. Here I can change my opacity back to, let's make it 50. Alright, now what? Now I'm going to create another layer. Go back to your background image and click Ctrl J or Command J to duplicate your layer. I'm going to select that layer that I just duplicated. Then I'll hold the Shift key on my keyboard and I'll select the top layer, and then I'm going to merge these two layers by clicking Ctrl E if you are using a PC or Command E if you are using a Mac. Now I'm going to focus on this area only. I want to bring more contrast to this area. So what I want to do is I can go back to Image, Adjustments, Curves. I can use the same technique to do that, or I can dodge and burn, which is located right here on your tool palette. So why don't we try dodging and burning? I'm going to burn first. Let's zoom in. The first thing I'm going to do is I'll burn the shadows, but you can also do midtones and highlights. I want my opacity to be, let's make it 15. I'll increase the brush size, and then I'll just burn some of these areas so they can pop out. If you wish, you can switch it to midtones. And since we have some harsh highlights right here, we can go to highlights. And notice that this is going to bring some of your highlights back. With DSLR cameras, you might get some dust spots, so it's really important to take these out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on the Spot Healing Brush tool. I'm going to enlarge my brush, and then I'll just click to make these spots go away. Next, I'm going to duplicate this layer once more, and then I'm going to focus on the sky. So let's click Ctrl J or Command M if you are using a Mac. I'm going to zoom out, and let's go back to Image, Adjustments. Let's try levels this time. So my only focus right now is just the sky, because the sky kind of looks flat. So let's make it look better. Let's make it pop out more. My highlights are kind of dead right here, so I want them to stand out. I want it to be brighter. So I'm going to use this slider right here, which lets me adjust my highlights, and I'll slide it to the left. Now make sure that you don't have any blown out highlights. You really don't need them. So let's move it to the left just a little bit more, and then we'll add some contrast by shifting my shadows towards the right side. You can ignore this bottom area since we are going to take it out. I think this is okay, so I'm just going to click OK. Now I'm going to use my eraser tool. I'll enlarge my brush, and I'll simply erase the bottom area. Notice that our subject is quite dark, so I'm going to zoom in and fix that. Let's see what we had before. Before and after. Now I'm going to merge these two layers by holding the Shift key, and then you can click Control E or Command E to merge these two layers, or you can right click and then click on Merge Layers. This is what we had before, quite flat, and this is what we have now. You can also use dodge and burn to dodge or burn the sky. So let's see if that's going to help any. Let's create another layer. You can increase the brush size by using the brackets on your keyboard, or you can simply click here and change the size. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to burn some of these shadows right here. And if you think this is too intense, you can erase it, or you can change the opacity of your layer. Then you can merge your two layers. Notice that we have some more spots. So we're going to get rid of them by using the Spot Healing Brush tool. And there you have it. Before and after. We can go on and on and on until we get an image that we really like. The same thing can be done in Photoshop Elements. Currently I'm using Photoshop Elements 10. Let's go to Enhance and click on Adjust Color, and then click on Adjust Color Curves. Notice you have the before and after. So let's make a few adjustments right here, and just pay attention to all the sliders that you are using and the curve right here, and your preview will pop up right here. So you can start by adjusting our highlights. Notice that the curve is going up, just like it did in Photoshop. Let's try the shadows. Mid-tone contrast. And that's making it look muddy, so I don't like that. Let's increase the brightness, mid-tone brightness. Now let's add some contrast. And back to mid-tone brightness. Let's switch to shadows. Once you're happy, click OK. This is what we have now, and this is what we had before. And again, you can do the same thing we did in Photoshop. You can keep duplicating your layers and erasing all the parts that you don't want until you get that special look.